Yeah, it was definitely disappointing. I think that we've obviously been competing all year to try to get to the playoffs. And beginning of the bye week on Monday or Tuesday, and they told me that if I didn't change my contract, my injury guaranteed, that I'd be I'd be benched for the rest of the year.
I've always said on this channel, nothing indicates more incompetence from a franchise than consistently flip-flopping your position. And ladies and gentlemen, it appears as if that's what the Denver Broncos are currently doing. A situation that consistently gets messier and messier just took a hysterical turn, because I think the Denver Broncos just realized the situation that they're truly in. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop, like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! We made $1,100 off of a $20 entry on Prize Picks. And it wasn't just me, it was everyone that followed these picks on my Instagram story. And the best feeling is the amount of people that made money as a result of this. I mean, bam, 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 bam! My DMs were flooded, so the best part for me was seeing you guys make money as well. But we're not done yet. If you haven't signed up for Prize Picks, use my promo code Mikerophone to double your deposit up until $100 on Prize Picks. And I give away my picks on a daily basis for free on my Instagram story and now my Snapchat story. We're having so much fun doing this. I'm so happy that I made you guys some money. And thank you, Prize Picks, for the sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The Denver Broncos made a decision that shocked the entire NFL world during their final stretch of the season. In a move that seemed to be a sequel to what happened with the Las Vegas Raiders the year prior, the head coach of the Denver Broncos decided to start Jarrett Stidham for the final stretch of the Denver Broncos season. Now, if this was 2 years ago in Russell Wilson's first season with the Denver Broncos, I would understand, because during Russell Wilson's first season with the Denver Broncos, he looked like a shell of his former self, throwing for his lowest completion percentage of his career, for his fewest touchdowns of his career. To go with 11 interceptions, he was sacked the most he's ever been in his career, and the Broncos even needed help counting down the play clock during their games during the Nathaniel Hackett era.
With the fans counting down the play clock.
But when Nathaniel Hackett got fired, Russell Wilson handled it with dignity and class, saying that he wished that there was something he could have done to keep Nathaniel Hackett's job in Denver. The Broncos really didn't have much of a choice. They traded Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, the 9th overall pick in 2022, and the pick that became Devin Witherspoon in 2023, with 2 second-round picks as well, and a 5th-round pick to the Seahawks for Russell Wilson, and a 4th-round pick. The Seahawks did just fine without Russell Wilson, and immediately the Broncos decided to extend Russell Wilson, despite Russell Wilson still having years on his contract. And the crazy part about this is, it's not necessarily the wrong move to extend your brand new franchise QB after bringing him in, because the benefit of that is if you're absolutely certain that this quarterback is going to be your franchise QB for the foreseeable future, you can beat out other potential QBs that are up for a contract extension, which would give you significantly more cap space down the line if you sign him quickly. And it seemed like the Denver Broncos were very confident in Russell Wilson being their QB for the foreseeable future. If you think back to where the Broncos were in the summer of 2022, it makes a lot of sense. This is a team that has been struggling to find their franchise QB since Payton Manning. And if you take a look at the Denver Broncos history, they've always struggled to find QBs. Even before Payton Manning, they were struggling to find QBs. From Jay Cutler to Kyle Orton to Tim Tebow to eventually Peyton Manning, Brock Osweiler, Trevor Siemian, Paxton Lynch. I could go on and on and on about the Denver Broncos QBs. So they were hoping that Russell Wilson would be Peyton Manning the sequel. Although obviously he wasn't nearly as accomplished as Peyton Manning was. Individually, Russell Wilson still won a Super Bowl and made it to a Super Bowl. And if you sign him to a contract early enough, then you could set your team up for the future, because you'll have significantly more cap space space to sign free agents in the future. And the best part of all is you can make a very legitimate argument that the Denver Broncos made the right decision. As it stands, Russell Wilson's brand new contract hasn't kicked in yet, and he is currently the 7th highest paid QB in the NFL. Now bear in mind, this is before Tua gets a brand new contract extension, which in my opinion is without a doubt going to be in the top 5 of the NFL and will beat out Russell Wilson's contract. This is before Dak Prescott gets a contract extension, which I'm also assuming will probably be a top 5 QB salary and will also beat out Russell Wilson's contract. This is before we find out how Baker Mayfield's playoff run goes. If he makes a very deep run into the conference championship or even the Super Bowl, then there's a good chance the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to pay him like a top 5 QB. And then there's the question of how much are the Vikings going to pay Kirk Cousins. At the end of the day, at the very minimum, Russell Wilson could be going into next season as the 9th highest paid QB or even the 11th highest paid QB, which is remarkable whenever you're trying to compete for Super Bowls, because typically the teams that win Super Bowls have QBs that are being paid outside of the top 5 highest paid QBs in the NFL. This even includes Patrick Mahomes last year. This is before the Kansas City Chiefs restructured his contract to make him the 2nd highest paid QB in the NFL. The year before, Matthew Stafford was the 14th highest paid QB in the NFL. The year before that, Tom Brady famously took a much lesser contract to allow the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to compete. I could go on and on about this theory. So you can make an argument that the Denver Broncos knew what they were doing when they decided to extend Russell Wilson immediately. They had no choice but to double down on Russell Wilson when they traded for Sean Payton. Best part of all is when they traded for Sean Payton, it seemed like the old Russell Wilson came back. This was despite his wide receiver core not necessarily being one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL. Jerry Jeudy was a captain of dropped balls this past year. Courtland Sutton also didn't have one of his best seasons this past year as well. The Denver Broncos offensive line isn't necessarily known as being one of the best either. And despite all of this, Russell Wilson still threw 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. But despite all this, the Denver Broncos decided to bench Russell Wilson towards the final stretch of the season. Why? Well, if you ask anyone why, the answer is simple. It was Sean Payton, an individual that quite literally declared war on Russell Wilson the moment he got in office. You remember when Sean Payton said that Russell Wilson won't have an office or personal coaches?
On the 30-second
Coach, Russell Wilson had a personal coach, Jake Hughes, in the building with access who wasn't on the staff.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that.
How do you feel about players having their own people off the staff in the building, access to the players?
Yeah, that's foreign to me. That's not going to take place here. I mean, I'm unfamiliar with it, but our staff will be here, our players will be here, and that'll be it.
Which, fine, Sean Payton comes from the Bill Parcells coaching tree. But apparently the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that the team approached Russell Wilson earlier in the year about his $37 million injury guarantee, which was his 2025 salary, which would trigger if he could not pass a physical by the 5th day of the 2024 new league year. Sources say the Broncos asked Russell Wilson to defer the guarantee by 1 year. Wilson told reporters that the Broncos threatened to bench him for the rest of the season if he declined. He did, then notified the NFLPA, which took a grievance to the NFL Management Council.
They came up to me during the bye week and beginning of the bye week on Monday or Tuesday, and they told me that if I didn't change my contract, my injury guarantee, that I'd be, I'd be benched for the rest of the year. And I don't know, I think we had 9 games left or so. I was definitely disappointed about it. NFLPA and NFL got involved or whatever, I think, but at some point. But I think, for me, I came here to play here, to win. I want to be here. I want to play here. I want to be able to win here. I want to win championships here.
Nothing says incompetence like trading a treasure chest of assets for an established QB, then immediately extending said established QB, which you didn't have to. He had 2 years left on his contract, and then deciding that you're going to bench said QB before the contract extension even took place. The crazy part is there is a path to contention with Russell Wilson as the Denver Broncos quarterback, but they decided against it. Or did they? Yes, ladies and gentlemen. In the latest on this saga of the Denver Broncos and Russell Wilson, I can't believe I'm telling you this. According to Jeff Legwold of ESPN, the Denver Broncos are open to Russell Wilson returning, but they say no call has been made yet. Man, I mean, nothing screams to your fan base that you have no idea what you're doing than consistently flip-flopping the way you are. And they've already made things very uncomfortable for Russell Wilson and the latter part of the season. According to this article, Sean Payton said that he met with Russell Wilson for 30 minutes on Monday, and a scenario where Wilson would return was among the topics discussed, but also that any decision would be made in a timely fashion. I told him, look, I don't think it's going to be a long, drawn-out process, but it hasn't been decided relative to what our plans are. As soon as we know something certainly, he would be the first to know. Later, Sean Payton was asked whether the discussion did formally include a path where Russell Wilson returns. Yeah, listen, otherwise it would have been like, hey, goodbye. We'll look at all the scenarios and try to do what's best for the Broncos, but communication will be important, and yeah, that final decision hasn't been made. So hold on, time out. You bench Russell Wilson for the final 2 weeks of the season, and now you're saying,
Hey, you know what? We might keep Russell Wilson.
with all due respect, what the are you guys doing? How does that saying go? When life gives you lemons, make lemonade. This is not even close to one of the worst situations in the NFL. You're going into this offseason. You have your draft picks. You have a pretty nice draft pick in a draft that has a good amount of wide receiver talent. And that's not only Marvin Harrison Jr. I've seen some mock drafts with 4 wide receivers being taken within the top 15. It's so lazy to sit back and say,
hey, you know what our problem is? It's the quarterback.
Because even if you did have an upgrade at the quarterback position in this upcoming NFL draft, it doesn't even matter because you're going to cut a quarterback during the very first year of his contract extension. This isn't even close to what the Las Vegas Raiders had to do with Derek Carr. Derek Carr didn't have as much money promised to him over as many years as Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr at least played in one of those seasons for the Raiders. In Russell Wilson's case, he'd be getting cut before he even took a snap underneath his brand new contract, which is below market value for the Denver Broncos. Now you might be thinking, Mike, what's the big deal about that? Well, part of the benefit of drafting a quarterback in the first round of the NFL draft is you get a QB on an extremely below market contract for 5 years, 4 years if it's in the second round or later. If you want to look at a prime example of this, look no further than the Miami Dolphins. Tua is still on a rookie scale contract, so what do? They traded for Tyreek Hill. They signed Teron Armstead. They gave Xavier Howard more money. They traded for Jalen Ramsey. They traded for Bradley Chubb. You're not able to build teams like this whenever your QB is making top 5 QB money. You could also make an argument that this is why Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are struggling decently on offense this year. And I'm not saying Mahomes doesn't deserve it because he still makes it work because he's Mahomes, but in this particular case, you're in a situation where you could address other areas of need that aren't your QB position, which the Broncos do have other areas of need aside from the quarterback position. But instead, you're just blaming it all on the QB. If you cut Russell Wilson and you designate him as a post-June 1st release, you get a dead cap hit of $35.4 million in 2024 and $49.6 million in 2025. Alternatively, you could try to swing a trade, which would help with the cap hit a bit, but no rookie quarterback is going to succeed in these circumstances. We've already seen with Bryce Young what happens whenever you bring a QB onto a team that has a plethora of issues at each and every position and is completely depleted of assets. The upside is, by the time Bryce Young is up for a brand new contract extension, this team may have done some things to address the needs that they have at other positions. But Bryce Young doesn't have a path to having a true wide receiver one join him on the Carolina Panthers. They don't have their first round pick this year. There's no way you could trade for an established wide receiver like the Dolphins did with Tyreek Hill or the Philadelphia Eagles did with AJ Brown. Maybe you could look towards free agency, but they did that last year and it didn't work out for them. So how would any quarterback thrive on the Denver Broncos this year? The Broncos don't have the number 1 pick, but would Caleb Williams thrive with these Denver Broncos? Would Drake May or Jaden Daniels or Michael Penix or JJ McCarthy thrive with the Denver Broncos? I highly doubt it. Your only choice is you have to ride out the rest of Russell Wilson's contract and build around Russ. And once his contract becomes a little bit more digestible, then you could cut him or then you could trade him. But the craziest part is I think the Denver Broncos are coming to terms with the fact that they don't have any other choice. But if the Broncos decide to move on from Russell Wilson, there are other teams that would like to take him. According to Jeremy Fowler, the Minnesota Vikings are a potential destination for Russell Wilson, but that's assuming Kirk Cousins doesn't re-sign with the Vikings, and it seems like the Vikings love Kirk Cousins. So at the end of the day, I could talk about this topic all day long. I have no idea what the Denver Broncos are doing. I think they should keep Russ. They don't have much of a choice. It's either you keep Russ or you put another quarterback in a truly horrific position. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.